Mr. Chairman, we are now live on YouTube.
Welcome everyone to House Transportation, Highways and Military Affairs Committee. Just a couple things. Remember to speak through the chair and follow our decorum and that. And with that, we'll start with House Bill 20, driver's license requirements, visual acuity. Who wants to take us through this bill?
Mr. Chairman, do we need to do roll call?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Representative Brown. Abigail, would you take roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Representative Baker?
Here.
Representative Brown?
Here.
Representative Burt?
Here.
Representative Henderson?
Excused, I believe.
Representative McGuire?
Present.
Representative Obermuller?
Here.
Representative O'Hearn?
Here.
Representative Stivar?
Present.
Chairman Burkhart?
Here. And Abigail, Representative Henderson is excused.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. So, and thank you to Representative Brown for being our parliamentarian. The Zoom system is a little odd. You kind of get into a rhythm when you're there in person, and this kind of throws it off. So with that, we'll go to House Bill 20, driver's license requirements, visual acuity. Anybody want to put us through this bill? And Abigail, is there anyone in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, it looks like 3 people are here. Would you like me to admit them?
Whoever wants to speak on this bill, yes.
Mr. Chairman, this is Luke Reiner, Director of WIDOT, reporting in.
Okay, I can see you, Director Reiner. So, Director, would you like to take us through House Bill 20?
Mr. Chairman, I would.
Or have someone do it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've and members of the committee. So for the record, Luke Reiner, Director of WIDOT. Mr. Chairman, I've also asked Miss Misty Dobson and Mr. Taylor Rossetti to join me as we work through this. But let me give you a brief recap, and then I'll push it to Miss Dobson for a sec. So this is a bill that was worked early in the interim, and it was not a planned interim topic, but it was a response to the legislative guidance that came out early in the COVID event, that basically came out to every agency that said, hey, please tell us what you want or need from the legislature in terms of statutes as it pertains to COVID response. And so this is the only piece of legislation for WIDOT that actually came out of that process. And let me just maybe add a little bit of context for you before I turn it over to Ms. Dobson. So very early in the COVID response, we actually shut down our driver services just for a little bit, as about 2 weeks. And what we had then was the governor's executive order that extended driver's license past the due date, which really mirrored federal guidance. But I'll tell you pretty quick, we figured out, hey, listen, we need to get these driver services back open. My guidance to WIDOT was that we were going to accomplish our mission in a COVID environment. And so we said, hey, what do we need to do to get our driver services back open and start issuing driver's license again? Because certainly we had 16-year-olds who were pretty interested in getting licensed. And what we feared was this potential backlog of not getting our driver's license quickly because they can back up on us quick. And so we started the process of reissuing and working to issue license. But we encountered one we encountered one very significant stumbling block, and that's what this statute addresses. And what the statute required was that every person applying for a renewal of a driver's license, that you have to take and successfully pass a test of your eyesight. And so most of you have a driver's license, and you know that every other time you actually need to come into the driver's services and look into that little machine. On the alternate times, you can actually get a note from your eye doctor that says you're good to go. But both of those were problematic because the general public did not want to put their face into that machine for fear of catching COVID, even though we were cleaning it. And specifically for the first couple months, it was often very difficult to get to doctor's offices and to get the note that says, hey, you're good to go. And so as we looked for a workaround in terms of a governor's or gubernatorial exception, we could not find any because, and which is appropriately so, because the statute is very clear and it's in law that you must do this. And so the suggestion in the interim, which you see in this bill, was to move the requirement to rules and regs, because that gives us flexibility to adjust the rule in time of emergency, and it would allow the governor to modify what the rule is in an emergency if we needed to. It does not reduce the standard, but it changes where the standard is set and increases the flexibility. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the background of the bill, and I'd like to kick it over to Ms. Dobson to see what she would add, and then I'll ask Mr. Rossetti to walk us through the bill.
Okay, Ms. Dobson, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Misty Dobson. I'm Program Manager for Driver Services. Just to echo exactly what Director Reiner stated, is we are not intending to change any standards that we currently have. In fact, our goal is hopefully to work with the Wyoming Optometric Association and actually do a better job of outlining those standards that are currently in our rules and regs. What we're hoping with this bill is that it allows us the flexibility in addition, as additional technology may come out, as you see kiosks potentially be an option in the future, to adjust how that vision standard is measured without going through statute change. So our goal here is really to just add the flexibility to adjust with upcoming technologies, as well as be able to make those necessary changes in the event that we run into the same situation where we ran into back in March. I think the director stated it very appropriately. People did not want to come into our exam stations. They didn't want to put their faces in those machines. They were not able to get into the eye doctors at that time. So this allows us that flexibility, and hopefully with the committee's blessing, we'll move forward and be able to continue to facilitate the safe drivers on the roads as that is our mission.
All right, thank you. And I guess with that, then, Mr. Rossetti, you want to walk us through the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Taylor Rossetti, Support Services Administrator for WYDOT. I'd be happy to. So I'll walk you through House Bill 20, driver's license requirements, visual acuity. We'll be changing a couple of different areas here, and it all is in line with the explanation that you've seen, but I'll walk you through just the changes, sir. Stop me if you need to. At the bottom of page 1, you see the first area, and what we're striking is vision test. And we're changing the wording there starting on line 15 and over to page 2 on line 1 to has demonstrated adequate visual acuity according to department rules. As Ms. Dobson and Director Reiner mentioned, there's just the ability to get into some more specificity in rules and regs, plus they could be adapted in an emergency situation if needed. Continuing on through the bill then, you've got just have some grammatical changes there on page 2, line 2, changing a which to that. A similar change there on line 6, page 2, changing which to that. Again, just clarifying language to align with, more modern statutory language. Continuing on through this, on line 13, page 2, we get to the examinations visual acuity section of the statute. And again, there on lines 16, 17, and 18, we try to use very similar language. And we add and shall require each applicant to demonstrate adequate visual acuity according to department rules. Continuing on, we just clarify there on line 18 that it's the division's examination, which means Ms. Dobson's examination there at the driver services department. We go on line 19 and strike the idea of eyesight and his. Again, that just clarifies and aligns with the language we added above. And then on line 20, we strike his and we change that to and the applicants. Again, just a clarifying point. Line 22, again, we make sure that a test that could be conducted is the knowledge of safe driving practices and the traffic laws of the state. We get rid of the and there at the end of that sentence, and we start a new sentence on line 22. And that sentence goes on to 23, and it shall read the examination. And then we add the word also. Again, just to clarify and make sure that everything is moving smoothly through the process here. On page 3, line 5, we get into 31.7.119, which this is kind of the renewal process rather than the first process. And again, what we try to do here on lines 10 and 11 is just add that similar language that says this person shall demonstrate adequate visual acuity according to department rules. Line 15 again is just a grammatical clarification error of changing his to the applicants. And then moving on there to page 4, lines 1 through 3, just basically puts the timeline for the promulgation of these rules that we were discussing here. And then section 3, just make sure that everything goes into effect in accordance to this section and shall be in effect July 1, 2021. With that, sir, I'd certainly entertain any questions you may have on the bill.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rossetti. So committee, any questions for the department? Any questions for the department? Okay. So then I have a few.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Representative Burt, please.
Yes, sorry, sir. I got used to the hand thing for regular. Just on Mr. Rossetti, can you just give me just a quick definition? My understanding of adequate visual acuity, are we just allowing the replacement of the eyesight device to where you've got your depth perception and then your your linear the lights there for your depth perception and stuff like that? Is this going to change it to a different type of an eye test to avoid that interaction with that box?
Mr. Rossetti, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt. Right now, the existing rules and regulations do specify the test that you described there. And really the intent of this isn't to necessarily change any of that. If you decide to go to your eye care professional and they fill out this form for you, they are doing a very similar test, right? Read the letters as well as, your range of vision and all of that. So the intent here is not to get away from that current process. It simply moves the specificity sitting in the statute over to rules and regulations so that if technology changes, it doesn't require a future statute change. Or if another emergency were to arise, you could promulgate an emergency rule to get around what might be a restrictive requirement that doesn't have any support in statute. That's all we're trying to achieve here.
Thank you, Mr. Rossetti.
Any other questions for the department? Okay, so Mr. Rossetti or Director Reiner, just a few other changes, grammatical changes and a few others in here. When was the last time this statute was updated? Do you know offhand?
Mr. Chairman, I would likely have to do some research on that to see. It's a fairly old section of statute. It's been established for quite some time.
Okay, all right. Okay, any other? Representative Stiver. Oh, you're okay? All right. Okay. All right. So no other questions for the department? All right. With that, I'll open it up to public testimony. Who do we have who wants to speak on the bill? I see Carla Klein and Dana Day. Okay. Carla, you came up first, so the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members of the committee, my name is Carrie Klein, and I'm the Executive Director for the Wyoming Optometric Association. The Wyoming Optometric Association is supportive of the proposed changes in this bill that would allow the Department of Transportation to define visual acuity requirements within rules and regulations, provided that the requirement for the vision test with a minimal threshold as currently defined and exists in rules and regs remains. We have had meetings with the Department of Transportation and have expressed some concerns with some recent changes in renewal forms and public safety. We feel it is imperative that the requirement for visual acuity and visual field tests remain a requirement for new and renewal of driver's licenses. We look forward to continuing to work with the Department of Transportation through the rules making process to ensure that the current requirements that have been carefully and thoughtfully determined through previous collaborations will remain with any new rules that are promulgated. And Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Klein? Any questions? Okay, Ms. Klein, I apologize. It's very hard to see the names on my screen. They're relatively small. So
Mr. Chairman, I get that a lot. It's fine. Thank you. We do have Dr. Dana Day is with us if anybody has questions for Dr. Day.
Okay, right. Thank you. With that, Dr. Day, you just here to answer questions, or would you like to make a statement?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do echo the words from our executive director, Carrie Klein, and we have had opportunity to meet with both Taylor Rossetti and Misty Dobson, and found them to be very pleasant and willing to collaborate with the Wyoming Optometric Association. We look forward to that opportunity. And as Ms. Klein said, we as eye care providers feel it's important that there remain some sort of visual acuity standard, the test that must be administered to verify and quantify the vision and visual field. So that does exist in rules and regs currently, and provided that that remains the same and that we are able to continue with positive collaboration between us and the department, then we don't see any problem in moving forward with the proposed language change in statute. And yes, I am here to answer if there is any questions that anybody on the committee may have.
Representative Obermuller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Day, what would be a practical alternative to the way it's done now in terms of reaching the same kind of adequacy conclusion? Can you answer that? Thank you.
Dr. Day, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Obermuller, currently, I don't know that we see that there's an alternative to some sort of visual acuity device. There needs to be a device that tests, but with technology changes, there could be an adequate, say possibly even an online type of visual acuity screening that an individual could potentially sign up and take, that would then quantify that vision, and that could be properly certified by the department or even by one of the eye care providers in Wyoming. I do believe that the intent of the department is to give them some latitude in the case of emergencies, as Mr. Rossetti and Director Reiner indicated, that during this COVID period, there were many of the eye care provider offices that were closed and not taking routine care. And so it certainly made it difficult for many of the individuals trying to renew their license to get in and get that visual acuity quantified. But again, I think there does have to be something in place. But by moving it, I do believe by moving to rules and regs, it does give flexibility in what that device can be. And I think the Wyoming Optometric Association and the department can certainly collaborate and get that identified in rules and regs appropriately.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Day.
Okay. Any other questions? Then I have one for both you, Ms. Klein, and you, Dr. Day. Ms. Dobson made a comment about visual screening and brought up a term that I'd like to ask you about, which is the visual testing kiosks. So how would you stand, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, on using those for a visual acuity test or driver's license? Either of these.
Chairman Burkhart, I guess I'll go ahead and take that. I think the key is that if there's a device that's used, such as a kiosk, it has to be able to verify that the individual is who they are, who they say they are, and that visual acuity is accurate. So how that would take place with current technology, I don't see that exists exactly. But again, looking to the future, things have changed a lot in just the last 5 years even. So there very well could exist something that can meet the standard, meet those requirements. Currently, I don't know what that would be exactly, but that would be the main thing, is that it has to identify that individual is who they say they are, and that visual acuity really is what their visual acuity is. Because obviously right now you have the eye care providers that are quantifying that, or they're at the department themselves where they have trained individuals that are using those screeners, and therefore they've identified that individual is who they are, and they're administering the test. So you know that the results are accurate.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Abigail, anybody else waiting to speak to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, no one has their hand raised for this bill.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So with no other people wishing to speak, I'll close public testimony. Committee?
Move the bill.
Second.
Moved by Obermueller, seconded by Baker. Right. I think we'll just handle this the normal way, which is page by page. Page 1, amendments or comments. Page 2, amendments or comments. Page 3 and page 4. Okay. I see no
Question.
no amendments. Question having been called. Abigail, would you take roll, please?
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote on House Bill 20. Representative Baker?
Aye.
Representative Brown?
Aye.
Representative Burt?
Aye.
Representative Henderson?
Henderson votes aye.
Representative McGuire?
Aye.
Representative Obermueller?
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn?
Aye.
Representative Stivar?
Aye.
Chairman Burkhart?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that is 8 votes aye, 0 votes no.
Thank you. And for all of you, that's Representative Henderson there. I do believe that is him. Representative Henderson, are you just waiting around after your vaccination now? Okay. So I have stuff all over the place, and like I said, I'm having computer problems, so I'm having to do everything manually.
Mr. Chairman, I'll handle this on the floor if you want, if you would like.
I was going to ask who's going to take this bill. Give me a second. Let me make a note of that. Representative. So with that, the next bill for our consideration will be House Bill 21. And Abigail, I guess you can let people on that last bill go back to the attendee room while we take care of this one. And would you, Abigail, would you also, when you do that, just go ahead and admit General Porter, please?
Mr. Chairman, I will work on this right now.
Okay,
Take me a second.
that's okay.
Mr. Chairman, I've just promoted, what was it? Mr. Porter.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
So, if any of the committee members want to take it, we're on House Bill 21, National Guard Preference for Education. If any committee member would like to take this bill and explain it, if not, I'll let the general do it.
Mr. Chairman.
I can take it if you'd
Yes,
like.
Representative. Okay, I have Representative Burt and Representative Brown. Representative Brown, do you want to explain the bill?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. This is a very simple bill. Appreciate General Porter being here. Basically, what this bill does is any member of the Wyoming National Guard, regardless of which state they may actually reside in, would be provided the opportunity to utilize in-state tuitions and fees for our community colleges and the University of Wyoming. Is that, I'm getting a head shake no on General Porter.
I would have asked you about that, Representative.
Mr. Chairman, if I could address Representative Brown.
One moment, General. Representative Brown, is it okay if the general explains the bill?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I may be on the wrong bill or something then, I'm guessing.
Okay. All right. General Porter, proceed, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Brown, I'm sorry that I explained it badly in the first place. For members of the committee that weren't a part of the interim, this was an interim topic that we worked through. And what this was attempting to do was brought forward from some of our Guard members that asked, this particular one that I referenced lives in Colorado and was attempting to get into the nursing school at LCCC. And because that there's a residency preference for that program, she was not allowed to enter the program because she was a non-resident. And she asks, the point being, hey, as a member of the National Guard, I do a lot of state active duty. I do a lot of service for the state. How about that we give me the same level of preference as a resident since I'm a member of the Wyoming National Guard? The distinction is that it doesn't apply to tuition or fees or any of that sort of thing. All it says is, hey, if you're a member of the Wyoming Guard, you'll be treated as a resident for that sort of thing. And then all the other probably grades that somebody would give against that would still apply. So Representative Brown, I'm sorry that if I misled you, it didn't apply to tuition or fees or anything along those lines. It's just to get into the program and be treated as a resident in that spot.
Mr. Chairman, that's my fault. I've actually got the wrong notes pulled up, so my apologies.
That's okay, Representative. I think we're all dealing with that effect right now. I know I am. So, okay. So General, anything else to add to that?
Sir, I think the only thing that I would add is we probably have about 25% of the Army National Guard that resides out of state, and a little more than that, about 30% of the Air Guard that resides out of state. So it is a retention issue for us, and it is a benefit to our soldiers and airmen that serve the state to have this preference, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you, General. Any questions for the good General? Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, why was the tuition and that not considered in the bill? Thank you.
General?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, it really, we were really just trying to give equal opportunity in terms of being a resident for that. During the interim, we just didn't go there. Really, the legislature has been pretty beneficial to the National Guard and the military over these years. And frankly, I just detected a little bit of shall we say, hey, some tiredness of continuing to give benefits to the folks. That was largely it. That we just didn't want to continue in this particular time of going down that road, sir.
Okay. Right. Other questions for the General? Anyone else? Okay. So, General, with that, would you happen to have an idea of if this would displace any Wyoming residents from programs?
You know, Mr. Chairman, I think it could if, but actually I don't know the inner workings. You know, if they sort of take all the residents and they put them in the pot. So let's say they have 30 slots that they can enter the program. They put 50 slots, 50 residents in there, of which a guardsman could be, and then they start competing. That could force a resident of Wyoming. That could happen, sir. But I don't know how each of the institutions actually go through their rankings to admit them in the program.
All right. Representative Burt.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, General, for joining us. So the understanding I have is that this bill would just give out-of-state National Guardsmen and women just the ability to participate in a residential program within our college system, not necessarily a preference over a resident. Am I understanding that correctly?
General?
Mr. Chairman, I think so. What this is talking about is Wyoming Guardsmen. So in this case, it was a young lady that lived in Colorado but has served in the Wyoming Guard for about 15 years. So it's just Wyoming Guardsmen that have that preference, and then, like I said, it just doesn't. Not being a resident, they don't get kicked out of the process. They get included as if they were a resident. Does that make sense, Mr. Chairman and Representative Burt?
Yes, General, does to me. Representative Burt, a follow-up or anything?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess where the question was, certain employers out there, when a military veteran applies, they get military preference points when they apply. So that, I guess that's where my question was, is could this be, could a out-of-state guardsman get a better preference for a residency required program in the college versus an actual resident of Wyoming, versus just the ability to join in with a residency required program? That's where I was going with that.
General?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, I believe so. It's if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, this does only apply to education. We're not applying any preference points in any other sort of employment. whether that's with the state or anybody else. None of that applies. It's only with educational institutions. And like I said, all it does is basically turn that person into a resident so that they compete with all the other residents of Wyoming. So to answer your question, similar to where the chairman went, was there is a possibility that because that Wyoming Guardsman now is considered a resident, the other factors could make them more attractive for that program, and they could push maybe a current resident out. Did that help any better, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, General, it did. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Porter. So they'll have preference as a Wyoming resident, but still have to pay the out-of-state tuition. Is that what I'm gathering? Well, I got
Mr. Chairman?
General.
Representative Stiver, yes, that is correct.
Representative, any?
no follow-up.
Okay. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to reiterate, I do apologize. I had my notes from my bill presented last year. And to actually go back on the question that Representative Stiver just brought up, actually, no, you would not pay the out-of-state tuition if it is a member, because we actually created that into law last year, resident tuition for military families, members, and spouses. So they would be covered underneath in-state tuition. But I do have a question for you, General Porter. I have always been a critic of creating laws for 1 to 2 people, that we may have, 1 or 2 people that this actually affects. And, we're creating titles and fixing stuff in our green books that really doesn't apply. So can you give me an understanding of how many people this actually affects within the Guard, and whether or not beyond the one example you've told us, this has actually become an issue that we need to bring up?
General?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, thank you, Representative Brown. As we talked in the interim, it's difficult for us to know exactly how many this affects. I estimate it's in between 5 and 6. As you can see, we do have quite a bit of people that don't reside in Wyoming. And we really looked at this, and I really looked at this as a retention and a recruiting sort of an incentive to do that. But sir, as we talked about before, I don't have good data yet. We're still trying to kind of figure that out. But I would guess it's a handful, sir.
Okay. Anything else, Representative Brown? Right. Any other questions for the general? Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Porter, you just mentioned retention and recruiting. I guess my question is there a trigger? You have to be in the Wyoming Army National Guard for 1 year or 2 years, join the Wyoming Army National Guard for 5 minutes just to be put on this list if they're looking at the nursing program.
Okay. One moment, please, General. Representative O'Hearn, you're breaking up both visually and audio. So I don't know if it's your system, mine, someone else's. I think we understood the question. General, do you need me to repeat that question?
Sir, Mr. Chairman, if I repeat it back to you, you can tell me if I got it right. I think what Representative O'Hearn was asking was, is there any standards in terms of the time of a person to be a member of the Wyoming National Guard in order to receive this benefit? And currently, the bill does not have anything in those sort of restrictions or constraints.
Okay, thank you, General. So I think the point also would be, I don't think most people would join the Guard for a week just to get this benefit. You're going to enlist in the Guard, you enlist for a length of service. So, and it's a commitment besides going to school. So, okay. Any other questions for the General? Any questions? Okay. All right, General, hang with us in case anything comes up, please. So, Abigail, do we have anyone wishing to speak on the bill?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing any additional hands raised.
Okay, no additional hands. With that, then I'll close public testimony. Committee,
Move the bill.
moved by Baker, seconded by Brown. Okay. It's a one pager. I don't see going over one page at a time. Any amendments?
Question on the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Question being called. Abigail, please take the roll.
Mr. Chairman, a roll call vote on House Bill 21. Representative Baker,
Aye.
Representative Brown,
Aye.
Representative Burt,
Aye.
Representative Henderson,
Aye.
Representative McGuire,
Aye.
Representative Obermueller,
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
Aye.
Chairman Burkhart.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that's 9 votes aye, 0 votes no.
Okay, who wants to floor manage this one? Representative Brown, thank you. Okay. Next bill will be House Bill 23. Oh, hang on, give me a moment. Okay, House Bill 23, Highway Safety Child Restraints.
Mr. Chairman, it's Abigail. I'm promoting people with their hands raised.
Okay, and you can let General Reiner go with our thanks, please. And we have YDOT back in. All right.
Mr. Chairman, this is Luke Reiner, Director of YDOT. I would be happy to start this, and I'd like to turn it over then to Colonel Haller to finish.
All right, it'll be fine. That would be fine, General. And for everybody who's watching this, it is Colonel Haller, even though it says Taylor Rossetti at the bottom. So with that, Colonel, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is really House Bill 23. This one certainly came out of the interim. And one of our interim topics that we worked very hard this last year was safety incentives and safety improvements on our highways. And certainly this bill deals with our safety child restraints and some improvements that we recommend there, and certainly has my complete support. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we'll turn it over to Colonel Haller to talk the issue and then walk us through the bill.
Colonel, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Captain Haller, Colonel at YDOT with the Wyoming Highway Patrol, although Administrator Rossetti may be a promotion. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll just, if I can, I'll go through the why first. I had troopers come to me early this past year, and the discussion surrounded the safety of infants and small children. And many of them had been involved in crash, death, fatality investigations with those infants and children. And with that, we started taking a look on kind of what our stats were, and we identified that 7 kids in the past 5 years actually died in vehicle crashes, of which 4 were in forward-facing child restraints. And so with that, the remaining 3, they were not fastened in correctly as required by that particular car restraint, or child restraint, I should say. So with that, then we also took a look at the national standards. And what we learned is from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, otherwise known as NHTSA, they had identified here a couple of years ago that children from the age of birth through age of 3 are best protected in a rear-facing child restraint. And that is because of their small skeletal structure, their short height, obviously, and their weight. And as a result of that, many states began to adopt what appears to be an average of about 2 years in their statutes for children to be facing to the rear in child restraints. So with that, Mr. Chairman, this was an interim topic as discussed by Director Reiner. Recommendation was for consideration to incorporate in House Bill 23 that we would add some language, Mr. Chairman, if I could go to page 2 now.
Please.
So on page 2, we're looking at inserting some information that would require line 14, each child who has not reached the second birthday, the infant seat or child safety restraint seat system required by this subsection, that it should be rear facing. Again, this is for the protection of children in an automobile, particularly when involved in a crash. With that, Mr. Chairman, I went back and looked on the last time that we had taken a look at this particular language and this statute, and it was 2005. And so with that, we do issue, again, a few more stats on the why, Mr. Chairman. We issue approximately 50 citations a month, every month over the past 20 months. So I think that's a pretty good average of where we stand for either no child restraint or improper use of a child restraint. So this is something that continues to be a concern and safety issue in our state. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we did speak with the interim committee about increasing the fine. Now we're on the bottom of page 2. On line 22, increasing the penalty from $50 to $100 for first offense. And then on page 3, line 6 and 7, increasing second or subsequent offenses from $100 to $200. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Colonel. I appreciate the information. I just have a couple quick questions. One, do you know if there's any information between the average cost difference between a rear-facing and a forward-facing child seat? And if you don't, that's okay. We can get that at a later time. 2, is there any direct correlation between the proposed increase in the fees and safety, as you've suggested? And then last, I guess, the 50 citations, those that you've mentioned, have any of those been for a second offense? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Colonel Haller, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Baker, screens are bouncing around. I see why you have a problem, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so the answer to your first question. I'm a grandpa now, so but I haven't actually went out and bought a car seat, but I have used them for my grandchildren. Having said that, I do believe that the cost between the two is inconsequential. And furthermore, the Highway Patrol, as a result of federal grants, while also in partnership with the Wyoming Health Department, who also receives federal grants, we receive quite a bit of funding to provide car seats to citizens in need whenever they don't have one. And we do, we call them child restraint rodeos, seatbelt rodeos, and we have these events throughout the state. And so we do provide those to community members at no cost. But I'm happy to run down exact costs. I just don't know them at this point in time. As far as the fine being increased, I believe your question, Representative Baker, is it specific to safety? And my response would be that it is specific to enforcement. And because what we are seeing is that we do have repeat offenders. And I'm looking through our statistics now, which I think gets into your third question. With that, for second offenses, we're at 75 second offenses in the past 20 months. And so certainly we have much more first offenses than we do second offenses, but of those, we are at about 75 second offenses that were charged.
All right. Any other questions for Colonel Haller? I think Representative Hearn, did you have your hand up before?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, but Representative Baker covered them all, and so did Colonel Haller.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Colonel, for your overview and your information. In your experience, and you're mentioning the number of repeat offenders, do you feel that the fine for the repeat or the fine is enough? I mean, is there maybe other additional things we could consider to help these folks? Maybe it's a lack of information, maybe it's an economic issue. How do you feel would be the next best step regarding the repeat offenders?
Colonel?
What do you think would be the next best step?
Colonel Howell?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, that is an outstanding question. What I would say is I believe that because of our training program that's in place now, troopers are providing that information to those that attend the training, but they're also providing it roadside. In other words, whenever they identify a violator of a seatbelt, of a child restraint, troopers are aware of the program that we do have in place, and that we can get those individuals child restraints at no cost to them, and we do that on a regular basis. So in response to another part of your question on is the fine enough? My sense is doubling it since the fine was implemented in 2005 seemed to be appropriate. Having said that, it is certainly what should be a responsible parent or driver of that vehicle to make sure that children are fastened, and you cannot put a price on that. Certainly if there's a crash. So I hope I've answered your question, sir.
Okay. All right, Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I have is, do you have more, they offend twice? What's the count on the third, fourth offense? How many of them kind of tickets are out there?
I'm sorry, Colonel, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stiver, that is a good question, and I wished I could answer it. The reason that I can't is the way that we track it in our system, it says second and subsequent offenses. So if there was a third or a fourth, our system does not track that. Now, I am happy to say we just implemented a new record management system, and that will track those additional offenses. But currently, I just don't have it, sir.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for Colonel Howler or Director Reiner? Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm just exploring here, but has there been any discussion about making this, or could it be made into a moving violation that would impact the driver's license? I'm just wondering, not saying it's a good idea, just wondering.
Colonel?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Baker, that too is a good question, and frankly, one that I had not thought about. I do believe that is possible, and that would require some work with LSO to identify where out in statute we would need to change this being attached to an individual's driving record. As you pointed out, currently it's not.
Okay, I'll get to you in just a minute, Representative Burt. Colonel, follow on to that question. The citations issued, are they primary or secondary citations? Has the driver been stopped for speeding or something else? Or is this a primary law currently?
Mr. Chairman, as far as primary and secondary, I am looking through this now. Mr. Chairman, I do believe that this is a primary law. Having said that, because of the oftentimes because of the way the seats are arranged or secured in a vehicle, it is very difficult to enforce. Typically, these are identified once the vehicle is stopped. But having said that, I do believe they are primary, but most often they are enforced as if they were secondary.
Okay, thank you. Representative Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Colonel, for your time. Under the 1304, the penalty section, it does look as if though the citation can be waived if the offender has been able to acquire the proper restraint system. Am I understanding that correctly?
Colonel Haller?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, yes, sir. You are understanding that accurately, and that is also as a result of the program that I previously mentioned, where we can provide those at no cost.
Follow-up, sir.
Representative Burt, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with that, if I'm a first-time offender and I now receive one of these restraint systems free at no cost to me from the system, does that would that still be considered my first violation, or is that first violation now waived in whole once I receive the new restraint system, and then my second would be my first? How would that work out, sir?
Colonel Haller.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, another great question. So if I understand what you're asking, what we're talking about is actually the issuance of a citation and then the conviction of that particular citation. And what we would be operating off of is the conviction. And so in this instance, if you had an individual that was issued a citation on a first offense basis, and then later they went and got the child car seat and they showed that to the court and that citation was dismissed, then in essence, down the road, they would be looking at, again, a first offense.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for Colonel Haller? Any other questions? Okay, all right. Colonel Haller, Director Reiner, please stay with us. Abigail, I think you've already admitted Catherine Wilkinson. Ms. Wilkinson, good to see you again.
Nice to see you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Catherine Wilkinson, and I'm here today testifying on behalf of American Property Casualty Insurance Association. Mr. Chairman, members, we do stand in support of the bill. APCIA supports any bills that would improve safety, and so we do urge your consideration for an aye vote on the bill. And Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Wilkinson? Any questions? Ms. Wilkinson, then I have one. How do you feel about the program where the Wyoming Highway Patrol, WYDOT, through a variety of grant programs are providing child restraints and for rear-facing child seats for free, so to speak?
Mr. Chairman, I think that that's a wonderful program, that providing access to safety for children, no matter what the program may be, is great, especially for those folks who may struggle with it. Car seats are expensive, and it would improve safety and improve the lives of those children and that may be in an accident. So we would support that program.
Okay, great. Questions for Ms. Wilkinson? Questions? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Wilkinson. Abigail, anyone else they're wanting to testify on this bill?
Mr. Chairman, there's no one with their hands raised.
Okay, with that then I'll close public testimony. Committee?
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Just a quick question, and I may have missed this, so I do apologize. I had somebody at my door. Colonel Haller, you mentioned that you have the capability of providing these car seats. Just out of curiosity, is this a federal grant that is provided, or where does the money from this, or how do you guys get these? And I do apologize if we're rehashing old material, but I'm just kind of curious on that.
Colonel, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, yes, sir, it is. It's actually NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. The funding varies over the years, but it is specific to the purchase of child restraints. And in addition, in the past couple of years, we've also partnered with the Wyoming Health Department. And we have run out of car seats several times in past years. And this has allowed a very much supplement from the Wyoming Department of Health to get additional ones out.
Colonel, that raises, oh, I'm sorry, Representative Ahern, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't get my hand up soon enough. You mentioned, Colonel Haller, that if you're given a car seat and your first offense is waived and you pull that person over again and the child is not in that safety restraint system, is that considered a second offense or a first? And also, I'm no lawyer. If I have multiple or subsequent offenses and I get in a car wreck and that child is killed, is there any, what happens then? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Colonel Haller?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Ahern. So if I understand your first question, as far as an individual gets fined and they, for first offense, and then they are stopped a second time, even though they went and got a car seat the first time and that first one was dismissed, it would still be a first offense on the second time. And yes, that is currently the way it would work. If the individual was not convicted of that first offense upon receiving a car seat or purchasing a car seat, then that first one would have been waived. As far as civil liability, we encounter that on every single crash. There typically is civil liability. Our troopers are getting called in to testify not only in criminal court, but also in civil court. As far as what may or may not come back on the state related to child safety restraints, I have not seen that in the past.
Okay, other questions for Colonel Haller? Any other questions? So Colonel, I do have a follow-up. You said that you've actually run out of car seats and restraints at times. Has that resulted in say, denying anyone who needs a child restraint or a car seat getting one that can't afford to go buy their own?
Mr. Chairman, yes, sir, it actually has. And at that point in time, we have actually gone back to Highway Safety, who manages these particular grants for us at WYDOT, and have asked to reprogram funding from another part of that grant. But of course, that takes time. So we have followed up with those individuals whenever we have been able to reprogram those funds. But to answer your question, it has. It has certainly responded in a no, them not leaving with one, or at least delaying providing them one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, okay, let's see. Representative Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative O'Hearn was before me.
Okay, well, go ahead. You have it now. That's
all right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel, so do you have an estimate of how much is collected annually with the current fines that are assessed with the $50 and the $100 before the increase? And is there any way to apply those directly to buy more of the restraints if you run out of the grant money?
Colonel Haller?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, I am putting a few numbers together right now. Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind.
No, please proceed.
Mr. Representative Burt, by my calculations and that 20-month time frame that I previously testified to, for first offenses at a current fine of $50 per month, it would be approximately $47,000, $47,100.
Right.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to confirm this, but I believe that it would take additional statutory and possibly constitutional revisions to where this money would go. I think it's a great idea to have it diverted back into the purchase of additional safety equipment, particularly for children for these types of offenses. But I do believe that that gets into actually a constitutional issue.
Colonel, you're spot on. Just for you, Representative Burt, all the traffic fines and that go to the county and ultimately to the school district. So yeah, that's so that the colonel's troopers can't be accused of running up the fine numbers to get more money. So with that, Representative O'Hearn, I think you were next, and then Representative Stiver, and then Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I talked to our chief of police. He said here in Casper Mills, there's lots of nonprofits, and the Department of Family Services, as like Colonel Haller mentioned, they do have a child restraint rodeos. And I don't know of anybody that hasn't been given one that is in really need of child safety restraints. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just another quick question here, again on funding. I recognize that this comes from NHTSA now. My curiosity, just being in a grant program with the state for almost 10 years, does this require any state match? Is there any consideration of any issues with not getting this? I know you said that the funding ebbs and flows from the federal government. Is there any type of state match that's required? Is there any type of discussions on this to make sure that we don't have any types of reductions in the amount of car seats that we can buy because we're cutting this at our budgetary level?
Colonel Haller?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, that too is my concern, and it's very difficult to predict the future. Having said that, we do prioritize the funding that comes in for what is allowable on a line item basis for this particular program. So I will tell you that we're going to commit, even if funding is reduced, and it has been over the years, we still commit what we know that we can provide to the public for this program.
Okay, thank you.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Brown.
So just to be clear, then it does require a state match component then for this particular grant, is that right?
Colonel?
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to think. We received several grants, but the answer is yes, and I believe it is about 10%.
Okay. Thank you, Colonel. Any other questions? Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions for the Colonel or the Director or Ms. Wilkinson? Okay. If they would hang with us, please. Okay, committee. What's your pleasure? Moved by Brown. Seconded by Stiver. Okay, it's pretty much a one-page bill. Any discussion? Okay, any amendments?
Question on the bill.
Wait, just a moment, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just offer the amendment on page 2 on page line 22 to eliminate the increase of the first offense, which would be deleting the new language $100 and reverting back to the $50.
Okay, Representative Baker, that was only for the first offense, correct?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and that was seconded by Representative Stiver. Am I correct? Okay, thank you. Discussion on the amendment. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I respectfully disagree and would ask a no vote on this. And the simple reason being, after hearing how many citations are already issued, I'm concerned that apparently this doesn't seem to be a major issue. But if we can move this bill forward with a higher penalty for the first offense and it becomes publicized and people hear this, maybe we start hearing about children becoming in their car seats and less of these tickets being issued. I do not think for any reason whatsoever we should be, allowing this to flow free with a $50 fine. It seems more of a slap on the wrist when it's a child's life at hand. So on and against. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the amendment, I recognize, the aspect of child safety. Being a former firefighter, and a first responder, I've been to a lot of incidents and accidents and stuff like that. But it also sounds like we may be coming across maybe an educational piece to where new parents may not understand the importance role of where to place their child. Going through with a lesser first offense, because if we go through and give out the $100 and then all of a sudden we give them a waiver, they're still not getting the $100 if they're not educated. But if you look at where we keep the $50 down, and then the second go around, which is what we're looking at, it is a stricter penalty for basically ignoring the fact that we're given a chance to rectify maybe the possibly uneducated side of that. So I would be on and for the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Representative O'Hearn.
I'm on and against the amendment for what Representative Brown said. You could make it $1,000 or $10 million if it's waivable. That's the whole point of putting the car seat in the car. And they're available by nonprofits, DFS, the Highway Patrol, our police officers here in Natrona County put them in and help them all the time. So I'm on and against the amendment.
Okay, Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Boy, I sure appreciate the intent of the bringer of the amendment. But one of the basis for my question about is defined enough is that, frankly, I think I'm concerned more about the safety and life. Heaven forbid a child should be lose their life because of a oversight like this. So I think there's more to this, and maybe we can work on it. I'd sure be willing to work with the other members, as we go to the floor and the subsequent readings on maybe a way to take that next best step. But I'm going to vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Other discussion on the amendment? Representative Stiver, is your hand still up, or did you have something else to say?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. On and for the amendment. I think them again, a $50 fine and educated, they're going to go out and get child restraint from DFS, the Highway Patrol, whatever. It's the second offense. It's the repeat offenders that we need to go after. My wife's got one of these tickets. I was working out in Kansas, and she put my son, which has special needs, he's ADHD, and you try to keep a 2-year-old in a 5-point restraint, they can wiggle out of them. In Kansas HP, $60 ticket. So on and for the amendment.
Okay. Other discussion on the amendment? Okay. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All good points. And again, I think it's important that we focus on the safety of the children. I don't know that this $100 fine is really going to prevent any incidents. I really think, like others have said, the first offense really should be an opportunity for education. I didn't bring an amendment to strike the increase on the second offense because I think that second offense is a different situation. But this first offense really is an opportunity for us to educate. The difference between the $100 and the $50 is a big deal for some people. It may prevent them from actually pursuing, a rear-facing car seat if that's what the solution is. Even though there's opportunity for these people to secure these free car seats and to have their ticket waived. I just really think it's an opportunity for us as a state to send an example. As others have said, maybe we can look at exploring possibilities for education. I know that some tickets and some adjudication require retraining of drivers and courses and things like that. Maybe there could be a 2-hour course where we just, we do something like that. Anyway, Mr. Chairman, on and in favor of the amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Stiver.
Could we get the colonel back in real quick?
Yes, I think we can. If you would do that, Abigail, thank you. Colonel? Okay, you're on. Representative Stiver.
Through the Mr. Chairman, to the colonel. When their tickets dropped, do you have a mechanism to monitor, that they have been given a ticket, if it's a warning or whatever? So when that other patrolman comes up for a second offense, if it's not the same patrolman, he knows that, yeah, they had a ticket, it was dismissed. Is that making sense, sir?
Colonel Heller.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stiver, yes, sir. Our system does track prior contacts, and so it would show up. However, there could be a lag in between what occurs in our system and what occurs with the court and in their system. And in that event, if there was a citation that was issued and then the violator got a car seat and ultimately that citation was dismissed, and let's say a short time later that a trooper pulled that same individual over and they were in the same violation and charged them with a second offense, once it got to the court that would then see what happened to the first offense, and it would be handled accordingly on that side as well. So it is being dual tracked. They just may be out of sync.
Okay, thank you, Colonel. So any other discussion on the amendment? Okay. One moment, please. Representative Brown. Oh, Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know it gets, sometimes as it gets discussed, it becomes difficult to keep track of. Looking at the bottom of page 2, the language is that if a citation is issued, then if it is a first offense, the fine, the proposed $100 fine shall be waived. It's not a may, it's a shall be waived, so long as the individual brings in a receipt proof that they've got either purchased or acquired in some manner a child restraint seat. So by the language of the current statute, the citation, unless for some reason the judge would dismiss the citation would stay, the record would stay that there was a first offense, but the fine, so long as the individual came in with some kind of a receipt that they had acquired a seat, the fine would be waived. And then the next offense, we would be looking at the second offense language. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Any other discussion? Okay. Committee?
Question on the amendment.
Question on the amendment being called. All those in favor of the amendment to remove the new wording and revert back to the wording of not more than $50 for the first offense, raise your hand. Okay, that's 4. All those opposed? Okay, 5. Amendment fails. Any other amendments? Any other amendments? Okay.
Question on the bill.
Question on the bill. Abigail? Okay. Question on Abigail, would you please take the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, a roll call vote on House Bill 23. Representative Baker?
Aye.
Representative Brown?
Aye.
Representative Burt?
Aye.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative McGuire?
Aye.
Representative Obermueller?
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn?
Aye.
Representative Stiver?
Aye.
Chairman Burkhart?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that's 9 ayes and 0 noes.
Who wants to floor manage this one?
Mr. Chairman, you asked me to do that originally. I'm
Okay.
more than happy to do that.
Thank you for remembering Representative O'Hearn. If the Abigail, you please everybody, General Ryan, with a moment.
Mr. Chairman, you broke up really bad on everything you just said there.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. Abigail, you can release everyone, but except Director Reiner. I'd like him to stay with us for a moment. Bring him back in. Thank you. So, Director, I just wanted you to be here. We have about 15 minutes before we go back into session, and I'm not sure that's enough time to adequately cover House Bill 24, the computer funding model. So I'm going to hold that until our next meeting, and that will probably come up as first topic in the next meeting. I think that will take some discussion and some analysis of the committee. And what I don't want to do is get us partway through that, take a break, and then come back in what might be potentially a month and try to pick up where we left off. I'd rather start fresh when we do come back than to do something like that. So, Director, I appreciate you hanging around with us and that. And as I said when we started, that would be if there was time for that bill. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you know, for the record, I completely agree with you. That's a good decision. There's not enough time to do that topic justice, and it's a very important topic to us.
Okay, thank you. So, committee, anything else? I don't think so. And I think that will do it. And we will adjourn the meeting. Abigail, yeah.
No, I just wanted to catch you after the meeting to go through the reports.
Okay, I will just stay online then. How's that? Okay. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, for the standing committee, oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
But you can disconnect